everyone, Dr. Lisa here, integrative physical therapist and women's health pioneer in the area of goddess wisdom, which is why I'm giving you conscious love this month for 28 days. So you may have seen on my posts maybe that, I was having a problem with MailChimp. Still waiting on them to tell me why I'm, supposedly while I'm talking about girlfriends and love and touch and taste and all the things, liver love and all the things I've been talking to you the past couple days, why that's flagged. I'm still waiting on them. So I thought I'd come directly to YouTube and finish off the series because I don't want to deal with them. And honestly, I was going to stop it after 5 and tell people if you want to continue on in your email box so I don't flood it, to just go straight to the YouTube anyway. So they did me a favor. But while I sort that out and might be feeling what today's topic is, stress, but particularly on my body in my HPA axis, is that I'm going to need to process it, right? So I'm working on processing it, finding different things to do and not stressing about it. Because as I'm going to tell you today, if you want to have a really great Valentine's Day, we're on day 7 now of this conscious love of 28. And we want to get to Valentine's Day next week and we want to maybe feeling a little sexy, feeling a little bit like feeling the love. You don't want to miss what you can do for your HPA axis. So the HPA axis is actually an acronym for the hypothalamus, which is in your brain, okay? Then there's the pituitary gland, which is also in your brain, kind of right between the eyes, deep behind the forehead. In fact, it's a key place where we place our intention and our focus in meditation, which is super cool when you hear really what it does. Those ancient yogis over 5,000 years ago were actually pretty darn smart, and it was almost as if they had the book of the body way before we were able to see it in the ways that we see it today. Then there's the A for the adrenal glands. And if you know anything about the body, you've probably heard something about the adrenal glands. You might not know exactly what they do. But basically, when you're in kind of fight or flight mode, which is this big communication between the brain and the body, the adrenal glands will set off adrenaline and norepinephrine and epinephrines and this cycle for dealing with this stress response, because the body needs to do something. In ancient times, we'd be running from the dinosaurs, or we hear somebody and we're scared and we want to run. Our muscles need to start getting the blood. It needs to go away from our gut. It needs to go away from maybe doing things like propagating and having sex, right? Or even sitting there and maybe spending so much attention on your digestion and whatnot. The problem is that sometimes we can do a miscommunication. And so if we are highly stressed, the first thing that happens, which might ruin your Valentine's Day, is that my body and your body needs to decide, am I going to take the precursors or the building blocks of my sex hormones and utilize them to make the sex hormones? Or am I going to utilize those same building blocks, some of them, and actually bypass the system and go and start working on that stress response with the heightened cortisol? Because as soon as the adrenaline's flooding the body, the liver gets the signal, I've got to release sugars and that glycogen that it's picked up that I talked about in Liver Love the other day. And when that happens, what's ending up happening is a whole chaos with your pancreas and the blood sugars and all of this going on. As all of this is going on, of course, we're going to affect our digestive system. We're going to affect our inner body's awareness of whether or not it has a inflammation going on with all that sugar in the blood. Also, with the stress of what's going on, I may be not digesting well. Things might be getting pushed or irritating my gut. And so all of this happening way underneath the surface might not seem like a big deal to you today, but day in and day out, your body's not going to feel like pumping itself up to feel sexy and energized and vitalized for the things you want to do. So what can we do about that? Well, we need to make sure that when the HPA is activated, the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, that it's doing it for the right reason. We also want to make sure it's not doing it any longer than it needs to in terms of how it's communicating. And by all means, this isn't an abnormal communication. We do need to know when we have an irritant and we have some inflammation at the cells. That information does have to go to our brain, and that does have to go to our alert systems to decide what we're going to do about it. When it goes down to our pituitary, we're releasing what's called corticotropin, and that is a very normal process. That is what will then start talking to prolactin and growth hormone down to the blood. That is what will start talking to adrenocorticotropic hormone and send it into the adrenal glands. And that's what's going to get the adrenals to, put the glucocorticoid hormones. These are like really hard to talk and say all the time. Noradrenaline, right? So we want the adrenaline, we want the epinephrine, we want these things happening, as I said. But what if the information coming from the cells is kind of chronic and stuck in a loop? What if we're really not necessarily in that active inflammation, but our brain is in a heightened sense from always being stimulated? I'm sure you could attest to having felt that in your life, where you have too much noise going on and you feel like somebody's talking to you and you feel like you need to lower everything all around so that you could focus on that one thing. The problem is we don't allow ourselves to do that if we're not getting good sleep. So that's another thing you can do, is try to get some good sleep. Don't eat too late. Make sure when you're digesting that it's not a stressor or an allergen or something like that. And let the body be on low inflammation mode. That makes sure that the lymph nodes and everything else that's dealing with your autoimmunity or your immune system is not having to tell the brain that it has a high amount of stress. All right, so if you want to have a really wonderful Valentine's Day, what you can do right now is learn how to meditate, de-stress the body by what you're putting into it, and making sure you're getting things that need to come out of it. And when it's that wonderful special Valentine's Day, you can have much gratitude and peace knowing that you did the best you could for your HPA axis and stress response.